when we came out with Ozone 6, now we're on 7. One of the big things that we did that for anyone that's ever used Ozone is we completely overhauled the whole graphic user interface. So this doesn't look anything like 6. We got rid of the whole green machine, and we took a different approach to it. And we brought someone on board that really he really studies the way the brain interacts with software, and we brought a lot of these things, a lot of features that you might have found that were in the settings. We've brought them to the surface to allow you to get a little more creative with it. So it's still a similar layout where you have these different modules at the bottom. Basically, we've got an EQ that we have here. We've got some dynamics, a maximizer, and in Ozone 7, basically what we did is we changed, we basically added a lot more modules, and so we have 4 new vintage modules. We've got vintage EQ, vintage tape, vintage limiter, and a vintage compressor. So we did completely new DSP for the tape, for the EQ, and what was really important for us was to make sure that it was accurate and not hyped. And so a lot of times, if you print stuff onto tape, it's a very subtle sound. It sounds better, but it doesn't sound over the top. And so we wanted to make sure that we were capturing that essence and bringing some of the cool features forward to let you mess around with. And so in Ozone 7 Standard, you get all these tools minus you don't get the EQ or the tape, but you still get vintage compressor and vintage limiter. And one of the cool things you can do in advance, though, is I can load, basically, I can have my drums right here, and if I just only play my drums, what I can do is I can actually load just the Ozone tape as a separate module onto like a drum bus or something. So that's one of the really cool things about the advanced version is that you're able to use those different modules instead of the whole piece of Ozone. And so let's hear a couple different ways we can mess around with this tape. The nice thing is there's presets to start with, and so you can see we can adjust the input drive, the speed at which the tape machine is playing, what type of harmonics you want to boost, low emphasis. You can always bypass it, see what it's doing. I've also got EQ that I could put on it. So we can mess around with some of the EQ. Maybe that's something I want to use more globally in the whole process. So we could unsolo this here, and maybe we can bring the EQ in here instead of the regular EQ. You can kind of see the different EQ settings here. We've got some cuts and some boosts we can make, and you'll see the line up there change as we do this. And even though it looks subtle, what you're doing is you can hear the really nice nuances of the EQ here as we mess around with this. So we're gonna lift up maybe some of the highs. So one of the other new things in Ozone 7 is the IRC4 algorithm. So these limiting algorithms are what a lot of people know us for. There's a lot of mastering engineers that will print their stuff through a lot of analog gear and still finish it through one of these IRC algorithms to put that final transparent polish. They're really well known for getting your levels up without any more coloration. And so IRC4 is what we've done that's new, and basically this is a frequency dependent type of limiting, so it's going to treat some of your transients a little differently depending on their frequency, which can leave a lot of more room so that not every single frequency is limited the same. And basically we have a couple different modes that you can put it in, and it does require a little more DSP, but it's very high quality. And so we have an imager here as well if we want to see the different types of imaging. On our dynamics, we basically have a 4-band compressor. And so what we can do is you can take each of these bands and you can turn off the compression and you can solo it. So if I only wanted to hear what this was doing, you could hear that doing. If you can also throw on auto gain as well if you wanted to make up for some of the compression that's going on. The other really cool thing that you have the ability to do, and I don't do it all the time, but it's a cool technique, is all these modules give you the option to do mid-side processing. So if I wanted to take the vintage EQ and only boost the highs of the stuff that's happening on the side, I could, and we can solo this stuff as well. So you can also solo the modules themselves, which are nice. And so there's all these options to turn things on and solo stuff so that you can constantly make sure you're understanding what you did and if it actually is making a difference. So if I solo just the EQ, solo just the mid stuff, could solo only what's going on the sides. So all these all have the ability to do mid-side processing. Another thing that's also helpful is, there's a whole set of presets to use, and a lot of times what people have a fun time doing is they'll go into some presets and start there and then adjust accordingly. So we've got all-purpose mastering, we've got some different genre-specific presets, and they're all using different types of settings within each module. And so I can scroll through some of these and see how I like them. So another thing that we've done is, and I try to encourage everyone to do this because it's helped me in my listening analysis, is there is a little ear next to the bypass button. And what this ear does is it basically boosts your track up when you bypass to match the gain and the level that it was at when Ozone was active. So that when you bypass it, you're not listening to whether it's louder or not. You're really listening to the different types of EQ or boosts or types of compression. So now that this ear is on, you can see when I hit bypass, it's still the same level. And so you have to almost train your ears a little bit more because you have to make it. You almost get so used to just turning off the limiter and being like, oh, well, that sounds good because the limiter made it louder. And this actually does a great job of really getting your ears into the the realm of like, well, what am I actually doing that affects it? And one of the other cool things that we have in 7 is we have the ability to do some codec preview. So I can preview my MP3 codec in real time and actually solo the artifacts that it's happening. And so this is something really cool because we don't have to export it, and we can actually make some mastering decisions or mixing decisions based on what we're hearing before we even export it. So if I just turn this on, we can hear, you know, MP3. So you can have different bit rates here. When you turn it off, it's playing full quality. If I solo the artifacts, you can hear a little bit. So, you know, it's cool stuff to listen to, and then you make some other decisions of, you know, if certain things in your track disappeared that you can't hear, maybe you might want to go make some adjustments. And each one of these modules has its own preset libraries, which is nice. And then what I will also say, and that's cool, is, and I don't know if I mentioned it, but when we came out with Ozone 6, we also released Ozone as a standalone app as well. And so with the standalone app, you basically drag audio in, and let me see if I just find some, let's see if I can find some just simple audio here to drag in. Let's see. Music. There's like some synth poppy thing. We'll drag this in here, and so we can turn this down a little bit. So what this does, which is pretty cool, is you can see these little bars here. It basically analyzes the song and tries to pick out the different sections. So you can go to different sections, and a lot of things that mastering engineers do when they're mastering is they jump around to different parts in the song to hear consistency. Jump all over the place here. And what is really cool about the standalone app, it's a host. So just like RX, if I wanted to, I can go insert any type of third-party plugin I have. So if you guys have anything that you would normally use in your signal chain that maybe it's not something that Ozone offers, you can still use another type of plugin. If I wanted to, you know, even if you have a version of Ozone 5 and for some reason you missed the reverb, you can add that back into your signal chain. I can go in, and maybe if for some reason I want to check out and put some trash in the signal chain, which is our distortion suite, I can add this here in the signal chain. And so if you have any other plugins that you want to use, that's one thing that's pretty cool about Ozone Standalone, is you can insert other plugins so that you're not just left with the different modules, although we do give you a pretty robust selection here. And so you have Ozone 7 Standalone, and then you can also use it in your host as well. So one of the things that we can do is when we're using it with different types of the vintage modules, we can continue to look at the different presets that we have. There's also really some abilities to make new folders and change some stuff. And one of the things that people use a lot is we have a history. So within Logic, since I've been showing you Ozone, we can click on this. This is everything that I've done since I started using the plugin. And what's cool is maybe, you know, lots of times what happens is you spend like an hour doing this, and it becomes to be late in the night, and your ears get fatigued, and you're not even sure if you're making the track sound better or worse. And so the best thing to do sometimes is just to go to sleep and listen to it in the morning. But you can back up at a couple spots and maybe set that spot as something you like, set another spot as something you like. And so now I can go back to these different points at which I might have, maybe my ears were a little less fatigued at a certain time. And so this is a really good way to look at your history and you know, go back in time. And a lot of times you'll think to yourself, an hour ago I had a better understanding, or I was getting a better sound out of that. And so the unlimited history is a really nice feature. So that's basically the main features in Ozone 7. We basically gave you more vintage processing. We give you the MP3 Codec Preview, and it's basically like the main things that we've done in Ozone 7. The Codec Preview is very cool. The soloing the codec artifacts is a very useful tool, because a lot of times, you know, when you're gonna master your song, you're probably gonna have to put it on YouTube or whatever streaming service that you're uploading to is basically not as a high quality of file that you normally would bounce. And so it's good to have that understanding of what it's going to sound like as you're hearing it, instead of, you know, bouncing it and going back and forth and doing all that. So it's a really great finishing tool, and it's also a good just learning tool to understand of all the different processes that you should consider when you're doing this. A lot of mastering engineers are probably not going to use Ozone for every single project that they have, but they can respect the fact that people trying to get a start, or people trying to understand how the process works, can understand that there's some EQing that goes into it. There's some dynamics. There's some types of limiting that can go into it. There's all these there's there's different imaging and different types of what's the word I'm looking for? Different types of levels and meters that you can look at to see how your track's doing. And we also like to do a lot of different cool visuals here to give you visual feedback. You know, when you are looking at dynamics, you can also look at the reduction that's happening. So for each band, I can see what's being done. I can go to all my bands here, and basically whatever one I click on, you can see the reduction that's happening. The imager, we've got ways to see things within the stereo landscape. I'll also say that Ozone Advanced comes with Insight, which is our metering suite. And if you want to get super into the types of different metering that you can have, I can find Insight here, and you can insert this at the very end of the chain. And let's see, where is it? There it is. So if I bring Insight up, this can go right at the end of the chain here. So now I have all these different types of meterings. We have a histogram on the bottom, and so when I play this, we even got a spectrogram here in real time. Now, one of the things that's cool is, I can't do it in here, but if I put Insight on a real track instead of just within Ozone 7 standalone, you can basically use these things that we have called meter taps, which will allow you to separate the different elements. If I only want to hear the drums, or I only want to see the drums, I can basically use this meter tap. And now that I put this meter tap on here, I can load up Insight. And when I go back into my spectrogram here, you'll see that I have you'll see that I have this meter tap section right here. And here's meter tap 3 that I added, and I can change the color of it. Maybe it's pink or whatever you want it to have, you know, green or blue. But when I play this, I should be able to see the relationship between all these. Which might or might not be useful, but sometimes when you really get into understanding where things sit sonically, it's always nice to have visuals because it can confirm what you're hearing, and it can be good practice to have this. And you can resize this window to be how you like it. You can go back to looking at the other views. You can have it just be two-dimensional. This is similar to what you might see in RX to give you some visual. And you can put, we're just viewing the drums right now, so you can only see the drums. This is the whole track. We could put another meter tap on just the instruments to see their interaction. And you'll see that pop up here. So now you can see how the drums and the instruments are behaving. So it's pretty helpful when you want to see how everything's coming together. And Insight comes with RX Advanced and it comes with Ozone Advanced. And so these are super powerful tools.